Whistleblower X, John. Pretty dramatic, right?
Very dramatic, Mr. X.
Wasn't that weird?
Very
I thought it was going to
scary.
be sort of somebody that we had heard of, which is why they used that. Like, why did this guy need to be Mr. X? I don't even know.
Well, it appears he was concerned for his safety or something of that nature.
But he was going to be on television talking about it. Doesn't that sort of negate the... This guy did a few strange things. I still don't really understand why he felt it was relevant to be talking about his husband and being gay, but whatever. We're going to get into all of this today, John. You know, everybody knows that you and I do our sponsor exclusive show on Fridays. We've moved it to 7:30, which is, I think, a good time. Hopefully people like that. They're going to be able to join us in 30 minutes on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon and Odyssey /@crowdsourcethetruth and crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. What are we going to be getting into today? What is it that Whistleblower X was fearful of, you think? Was it these scary-looking FBI dudes that I've put in there?
Well, that's really the question is, you know, well, what would he be concerned about? Is he worried about MS-13? Is he worried about the Crips? Is he worried about the Bloods? Well, who's he worried about?
Yeah.
So he, and keep in mind, these guys are coming forward with sort of tax avoidance information about, or alleged tax avoidance information about.
I think it's tax evasion. Tax avoidance, I think, is legal.
All right, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm saying allegedly, right? I don't want to get thrown off the air here in the first 30 seconds. So it's allegedly, right? Alleged tax avoidance, tax evasion, whatever it might be, right? But the point is, nobody got shot in the face. Nobody was killed.
Yet.
We're not talking about murder and that these guys witnessed murder. Well, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about taxes.
Right.
And when we listen to the testimony, they're talking about hundreds of thousands, 100,000 here, 250,000 there. They're not really talking about the other, you know, that other conversation that was in Mr. Comer's hearing where they were talking about 10 million, 17 million with the FBI. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. These guys with the taxes were talking about 100,000, 250,000. It's numbers like that. And so I understand the concern, but what, is he afraid he's going to get greased? Or is he afraid they're going to disappear this guy on the woods of Maryland because he's ratting out Hunter Biden for $100,000 worth of taxes? Wow, if that's the case, gee whiz, you know, then you look at Edward Snowden, you look at Julian Assange. Julian Assange, they stormed into that, what was it, the Ecuadorian embassy in the UK, right? And 7 or 8 guys carried him out like an animal, right? Now, this is that bullying that I've talked about before, which is at the end of the day, it just comes down to overpowering. Who's going to overpower the other one? Very much a male type of thing, right? We see this overpowering. You see a lot of men doing this type of crap, right? You don't see girls showing up in dainty little dresses and, you know, ballerina tulle skirts and that kind of stuff, right? You don't see that. It's always men with the guns and the, right? In fact, do you have the footage of Roger Stone and the guys pulling up at Roger Stone's house with the AR-15s? It's like unbelievable. It's like, what the hell did Roger Stone do? Does Roger Stone have a cannon in his living room? What the hell were these guys worried about? Because my understanding is they called Owen Schroyer. They called
How do they
Owen
decide?
Schroyer. Well, that's my point. It's like, in what are the circumstances where they decide we need an entire tactical team to go to Roger Stone's house at 6 a.m, and the guy's what, 70-something years old, and he's in his boxers, right? And it's not, the sun's not even up, right? And yet Owen Schroyer gets an email or a phone call. Hey, we'd like to speak to you. You know, when can you come down? Bring your attorney.
You know what?
Wow,
I think I know why. I think it's well known that Owen Schroyer is a supporter of the Second Amendment, and if you come to his house with guns, you probably will get shot. But
Wow.
Roger Stone is sitting in there just like smoking cigars and hanging out with his wife, going to swinger parties. And so they figured, let's bring a lot of guns to his house because we'll just drag him out.
Well, we also heard this past week that one of the whistleblowers that's been talking about improprieties having to do with Hunter Biden, his name is what, Gal Luft or something? It has a strange name, right?
Well, it's an Israeli name.
Okay, so I don't hear a lot of guys named Gal, right? It's like a
Gal
named
Gadot.
Sue.
Yeah, it's I guess it's both,
right?
huh?
Yeah. So Gal Luft is the guy's name, and he came forward as a whistleblower, and the DOJ levied charges against the guy
The next day.
Within a week of him coming forward as a whistleblower and sharing his identity, boom, here come the charges.
So you think maybe Professor X is next, huh?
Well, it's just a question of, it's these ad hominem attacks, meaning in this world that we've been in for the last couple of years with this pandemic reporting, who hasn't been attacked personally? In fact, one of the physicians that I did this radio show podcast with Dr. Judy, Dr. Jim Thorpe, was just let go by his hospital. He's one of the most respected OBGYN guys in the world. I mean, he's like a high-risk OBGYN who does intrauterine surgeries. I mean, the guy is
St. Louis?
What's that?
Missouri?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, maternal and fetal. He's a young guy, so they fired him. Who ever heard of a doctor getting fired unless you're doing something crazy? Look, 5 out of 5 ratings from the patients, and they fire this guy?
He's brilliant. The guy's brilliant. He's highly cited, and he was trying to bring attention to some of the impacts.
53 reviews, and he's 5 out of 5. That is very good for anything.
I'm telling you, guy's a rock star. So we were on the show together, and he just lost his position. You look at guys like Paul Marik. You look at Aaron Cariotti. All these guys lost their jobs. These are adults, right? And they're losing their jobs. Now, again, I opted to sacrifice a bit of credibility to not have that ad hominem nonsense
not get rolled
in the
up
way of the evidence. Well, to get in the way of the evidence, in other words, I don't want all that stuff as the I mean, look, talk about distractions. I mean, how many lawsuits do you have right now? 7, 9? Yeah. So
large number.
So, right. And remember, one of those parties at one point wanted you to reveal your source, wanted you to divulge my contact information.
Oh, they were desperate for it. That was the asshole Adam Sharp and his asshole attorneys. I hope they're watching. They're fucking assholes.
So they wanted you to divulge your sources. They wanted my contact information so that they could serve
Who took care of you?
As part of it.
Who blocked that?
You're the man. That's how we do this. That's how we do it. So it's a crazy world that we are inhabiting right now. And the fact that Mr. X opted to protect his identity just goes to show how scary it is out there. And the fact that these ad hominem attacks are real. And again, that's the reason for this, not because I think I'm Batman. I mean, I'm not, that's not what this is, right? So that's not what I'm about. The idea here is I don't want them coming after me and kicking my door in. I mean, remember the story? I mean, it really moved me when we heard the story from Siaka Masakoi about how they just came to his house and kicked the door in with one of those battering rams. And he's got kids in the living room. They're sitting there like, what the hell is going on here? And they come in with battering rams and AR-15s like the Roger Stone thing. I don't know, man. I don't know. So
Tall Oaks
I understand, Mr. X. I understand.
Is with us in the comments on YouTube, just coined a phrase that I am co-opting. The lawfia. Like mafia. That's what this is. And Donald Trump Jr. was interviewed by Megyn Kelly. He mentioned lawfare. So that's good. I want to hear prominent media figures using that word, talking about lawfare, because there has not been enough attention on the Lawfare Institute. And I see evidence in the public domain that causes me to believe it is a criminal operation. I can't prove that yet. And that is, of course, my opinion. You might look at the same evidence and come to a different conclusion, but I do believe there is criminal activity going on here and it needs to be examined. That's my opinion.
Well, we are going to be taking a look at some real legal, interesting stuff tonight in the show. And when we go into the patron-only portion of the show, so for the people who subscribe to either Crowdsource the Truth, over at Patreon or Subscribestar, or to the I Am John Cullen channel over at Patreon or Subscribestar, what we're going to dig into is something called the State Secrets Protection Act. And the state secrets are the things that basically the government just gets to say, we're not going to talk about this and the case is closed. And I'm oversimplifying it, obviously, because we don't have a lot of time to dig
Not that much, though. That's pretty much how it works.
And we're going to dig into, has it been abused? And one of the things that we're going to do, so you mentioned the Lawfare Institute and Ben Wittes and a lot of this stuff. So a lot of these guys are at Harvard. Or came through the Harvard machine.
Tribe, all those guys.
Came through the Harvard machine. So one of the things that we're going to do in the show with the patrons is we're going to look at cases, and we're going to look at cases that invoked State Secret Protection Act. In other words, what is happening where they throw the state secret flag and go, okay, we're done, we're out of here. And it's like, what? What are those cases? What's going on where they're able to pull this off? And so I've assembled about 5 or 6 different cases. And by the way, when you go to Harvard Law, this is how they study law. They call it the case method. So you study cases, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to use the Harvard methodology of looking at about 4, 5, 6 different cases where they're using this State Secrets Protection Act to... it's like a get out of jail free card for the government. Yet there's some other things that we're also going to dig into, like the Classified Information Procedures Act and the Federal Tort Claims Act, U.S. versus Reynolds. So this is going to get into a lot about... I understand why Mr. X is afraid because, well, where's Julian Assange right now? He's still in prison awaiting extradition. And we're coming up on, 4 years of imprisonment next April? So it's 3.5 years he's been in jail now, or 4.5 years. It's absurd. Yeah. So that's not justice. That's not speedy trial. So, and then what about Edward Snowden? He's been living in exile.
I tell you what, it might not be that bad. You probably have more freedom in Russia right now than you do here.
I don't know that he wants to come back. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but if I'm him, I'm not sure.
His wife there, his kids. Why leave?
Yeah, it's just the food is terrible, and you know that. We've
I've never been there
to Russians. No, but Russian food. You had a Russian
really,
wife. I had a Russian wife.
No.
Yeah, the food is just a disaster.
I got something to add to what you were just saying, John. I had no idea you were going to get into all this Harvard Law School stuff, and I didn't tell you this, but something happened earlier this morning, which I will reveal when we go to the sponsor exclusive. This is a bombshell that I don't think anybody has ever discussed before about a very prominent attorney who everybody knows about.
Ooh. I think we know who we might be talking about.
No, I don't think you do. It's not Alan the douche. Another very
jump the shark. Not jump the shark.
Not jump the shark.
All right. Well, let's show the audience a couple slides from this deck because I've got a couple things that we can talk about here on YouTube without getting into too much trouble.
Hopefully.
So for those of you who aren't following me on Twitter, it's like WWE meets Princeton biology department. It's hysterical. It's like flasks and petri dishes meets tag team wrestling. It's just wild what's going on Twitter right now. Everybody, by the way, is very much aware what happened to the flu. And all these wannabes are coming out of the woodwork with these nonsense stories. And it's like, remember in school when the teacher would call on somebody who didn't read the book?
Yeah.
And you'd be sitting there and they're making it up and you're sitting
and
there
it comes out and you're like,
dude,
ooh, they didn't read it.
Oh, you're like, dude, this is, oh man, no. Oh. And it's just like, no, really? Ooh. And you just, oh, he's digging the hole, man. He's just digging a hole. That's kind of what it's like watching these other guys talk about what happened to the flu. And I'm having a lot of fun. At this point, it's hard for me to get angry. So I'm just having fun watching them and just laughing. So, but yeah, let's go to the deck. Let me show the audience a couple things that we're allowed to talk about. There we go. So first of all, again, it's important to remind the audience and the censors who watch over our show that the COVID health emergency is over, according to the WHO and President Biden. And the CDC is now tracking the stuff on a monthly basis and stopped tracking a whole bunch of metrics. So it's over, according to the WHO. Right. So we'll have to get a memo soon to find out when can we make fun of it and become just a little bit more irreverent without getting into too much trouble, given that it's over, right? It's, in other words, are we allowed to make fun of the Black Plague? Are we allowed to do that? Or are we not allowed to make, that was what, the 1300s, the Black Death? Are we allowed to make fun of the Black Death and the treatments back then using leeches? Are we allowed to make fun of using leeches? Are we not allowed to do that? Because that was the consensus at the time. And the consensus at the time was bloodletting and leeches. So let's not go there. But if you go to the next slide, one of the things that we talked about with our patrons last week, but not on YouTube, that then hit the news like wildfire right after our show, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, is this Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. And
did anybody get that yet?
In my family? Oh yeah, we've all had it. And what do you mean?
Just that, I mean, are they having this outbreak, or they're just talking about the map more?
Oh no, man! It's major. Look at the map. It's a major outbreak of Crimean. This is disaster. Look how red that map is. Look how widespread. You
told us last week is just the area where it could.
I told the patrons that. I didn't tell the YouTube world that yet. So that's okay. Yeah, so this is just kind of like where you might find Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever.
Any given day.
Just figured. Yeah, this is just another example of lousy map design. But for me, it's, again, that's kind of fun. But that it's spreading because of climate change. And this is something we have to take very seriously, because if Manhattan isn't underwater in the next couple weeks or so, this is going to get you.
You sure it's not spreading because of karate? Look who wrote the article.
Yes, and this is Bruce Wiley. Bruce Wiley.
Coyote.
Why Bruce Lee? Yes, but Bruce Lee, Bruce Wiley. But it's exciting. I mean, Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever.
Oh my God, it does say
due
to climate change. I wasn't even looking. That's crazy. I'm surprised that's not happening because of Trump.
It is. And because the climate change is because of the changes legislatively that Trump put in place. And if Trump hadn't had this false presidency, this was an illegitimate presidency, right? Hillary told us that. His presidency was illegitimate, according to her book. I think it was in her book. She says the presidency is illegitimate. So that illegitimate presidency led to this climate change. Therefore, Crimean Congo fever is Trump's fault. There you go.
Makes sense.
Tell Stephen Miller, come on the show next week, and he can take the opposite side of the argument, that it's not his fault, right? That the administration didn't really cause this, and I'll debate him, and we'll have a whole lot of fun with that. And we'll do shots every time every time we get stumped, we'll do shots. It'll be fun. All right. So the next slide, what do we have here? This is the Bob Kennedy testimony.
To witness him yell at all of those people. It was great.
So of course you're there with Charles Ortel. You're in the gallery watching right over his shoulder. And this was somewhat historic. We're going to be looking at this tonight with our patrons also, in that Stacy Plaskett, who is the so-called representative
Yeah.
from the
U.S.
Virgin
Virgin
Islands,
Islands.
who doesn't get to vote in Congress, is the senior most person in this committee.
Well, no, she's the ranking
member.
member, senior most for the Democrats. Jim Jordan is the chairman.
Right. So she's the ranking member. But as a representative of the Virgin Islands, she does not get to vote in Congress.
Yeah.
Now, our friend Bill Maher has this.
Wait, they changed this.
Because it used to say so-called.
Yes.
I know.
This is how you know. And she was looking right at me when I was in there. She knows who I am. They changed that because of me. Because I kept tweeting that. Wait a second now. Oh, no. I have it on. Hang on. Let's just check this here.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Because that's dirty pool if they're doing that.
Of course they are. Of course they are. So Stacy Plaskett is unbelievably disrespectful to Bobby Kennedy Jr. right from the outset. I mean, the guy hasn't said a word yet, and she's already calling him a racist. And what
they changed it. So this is when I published this on Substack. This is March 10th, 2023. So there she is insulting Matt Taibbi. This was just a screen capture from Wikipedia, and it says she's an American politician, attorney, and commentator. She is a non-voting so-called delegate. But now it just says she's a non-voting delegate.
I remember when you pulled it up. I remember when it happened. So
she's a clown.
Well, again, you're sitting in the room. You get Charles is sitting next to you, and she starts going off on Bobby Kennedy Jr. And he then, at the end of this, I think a lot of people were just sort of, aghast at what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And he launches into a speech about unity and totalitarianism and all this, that Twitter just lights up. And you see people who are Republicans and independents saying, you know what, I wasn't really thinking about voting for him, but I kind of like what this guy is saying.
Yeah.
So he is attracting maybe a class of former Trump supporters that are saying, you know what, I never would have voted Democrat, but I like what this guy, and I may not agree with everything he's got to say, but I like the way he presents himself. Did you see the video we're going to run out of time. Did you see the video this week where Joe Biden is talking to the president of Israel?
And he falls asleep in the middle of the conversation.
And the guy from Israel looks off to the people on the side, like the handlers, like, are we okay here? Like, and then Joe just keeps going, though. He keeps going. He wakes up. But that moment is so spectacular. And, the fact that it happened this week, and you contrast that with Bobby Kennedy. And so it wasn't enough that Stacy Plaskett comes out swinging and basically said, why are we even having this hearing? This guy is a racist. I mean, did he leave his hood in the car? What do you got?
Wait a minute now.
Fact check.
They fact checked that he didn't fall asleep. He just became incoherent. Look, his eyes are closed. He's looking down. No, he's not asleep.
Who said he fell asleep? Nobody said he fell. Again, they're fact checking things that nobody actually said. Nobody said he fell asleep. He's just mumbling.
I think he fell asleep. Do you know when you're watching a movie?
I watched the whole clip. And the funny thing is, watching the CNN people watch the clip, and the CNN guys are like,
but wait a second.
Wake up, Joe. Wake up, Joe.
When you're with your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, and you're on the couch watching a movie, and she's looking at you, and she can tell you're falling asleep, and she says something, and you'll be like, yeah, the chicken's underwear is in the attic. And they'll be like, what? And you're like, yeah, what did I just say? I think I'm falling asleep. That's what Joe Biden was doing. He was on the way to falling asleep, speaking incoherently.
I wonder if they have like a remote e-collar attached to his butt.
shock
They
him.
just hit the thing. Yeah, wake up, Joe. Wake up. What? Okay.
But
and
we
he's back
are
up.
just about out of time here, John, and we will continue the conversation in the sponsor-exclusive segment that people can join us for in just 5 minutes on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I hope that people appreciate that the concept of putting out videos for free on YouTube is not actually free, because what you are paying with is your ability to choose what you get to hear. So for a very nominal fee, you can join us for these sponsored segments where there are no corporate sponsors. It's you, the viewer, that is the sponsor, and I remain convinced that this is the only way to keep outside influence out of the news. We'll see everybody in 5 minutes. Thanks for watching.
I welcome influence from Ferrari. They can sponsor the show. And